What's up, guys? HellaBass here. Weather's finally getting nice, warming up outside. Got to get this cleaned up. Complete mess. Got to get the boat ready. The water's thawing. But probably wondering what you just saw. Maybe you've already seen it. Some of you probably already seen that boat crash before. But I want to talk about it a whole lot more. First off, super glad Aaron, nobody else was seriously hurt or killed or anything like that in this crash. So that's the most important thing here. I first saw this clip when I was on vacation last week. And the more I thought about it, it started to eat away at me. And I was like, we need to talk about this. There are several things here that need to be talked about, both safety-wise, both rules-wise, how that can be prevented. So that's all coming up here. There are some fundamental key learnings here and best practices that I think that need to be talked about and shared. And so that's why I'm making this video. So that hopefully, if we can just help one person that can see this, keep them from making a similar mistake, then this video will be totally worth it. The other thing is it totally bogs my mind how there wasn't a harsher penalty for safety reasons come down from the tournament officials from MLF. I don't know how that happened. We'll discuss why and how and what rules in great detail. All right, let's watch the full video over again, all the way through, and then we'll see what we can learn and take away and break it away in little sections. And hopefully we all learn some valuable lessons from this video and this almost super tragic accident that didn't turn out so bad. All right, now that you guys watched the full video all at once, let's break down each one of these factors that made this a very risky situation. First of all, the tournament blast-off is probably one of the single most chaotic, dangerous times for driving a bass boat or any kind of boat in a tournament, whether it's a walleye tournament or a bass boat tournament or whatever. You have all these boats, slightly staggered taking off, but it creates this pinch point and bunch area where you have the most amount of boats going as fast as possible in a very short duration in a very small space. So that, in general, is an unsafe situation, or at least a risky situation for driving a boat. So morning takeoffs are always going to be a little bit more dangerous in this type of event. Also, competitive nature takes over in a lot of us during tournament situations. It's not uncommon to feel that urge that you want to pass boats, get to your spot first, get to that stuff you found in practice. You're worried somebody else is going to beat you to it. So you tend to maybe not make the best decisions, and you try to drive extra fast. You try to cut corners. You try to get around people. That's just kind of the pressure that maybe leads to some poor decision making. Inside lines can be a way to get an advantage, right? If you can cut the corner of a channel or take the inside line, much like NASCAR or race car driving, the inside path is typically the shortest line and the fastest way, but sometimes that comes with risk. Cutting channel turns and going inside islands and things like that, maybe where there's deep enough water, where you're not put in really tight positions, maybe come with some risk, but probably not as risky as this situation where we were cutting very tight to a point that likely had a blind spot where you couldn't see around the corner. There's reduced margin for error when you're close to a hard structure like a riprap bank or a dock or an island. Who knows if there could have been kids fishing on that bank, somebody fishing from shore, another boat anchored fishing on the other side of that you couldn't see, maybe docks that were closer that actually were, right? There were docks coming up. Maybe they could have been closer. Cutting a channel or a flat or something like that gives you more wiggle room, but going really tight to a hard structure comes with increased risk for sure. It just comes down to your margin of error goes down really fast when you do something like that. During this launch process, all these boats taking off, even though everybody's going the same direction, boat wakes come out at an angle, and everybody's angle is a little different. So instead of having like really repeatable waves in a situation, you're having kind of chaotic nature and kind of a mix, kind of a washboard environment of the waves that are very hard to navigate and predict. When you're in rough water, but the waves are all coming the same direction, you can get a pattern and you can get going and you can kind of account for what's about to happen. But there's a lot of unpredictability in the way those waves will slosh together in a takeoff situation. This can be very treacherous to respond to and make good decisions and corrections on your boat hull at really high speeds when you're trimmed out. Not to mention, when you get that close to the bank, there are likely wave echoes coming off that bank. And you can kind of see it in the footage. There was likely boat wave echoes coming back off that hard structure that caused him to correct in a way that he wasn't likely ready for, and that's probably why his boat nose hooked, or his bow hooked into those waves. When you're maxed out trim like that, any kind of turn, and he was probably leaning that way trying to make this turn anyways, so, once that bow hooked, he was probably, doomed to, hook into that bank, which is a very dangerous situation. So the boat is hooked. Aaron Britt's up on the bank. I think that went about as well as possible. I don't know that there was anything but luck that went into that as far as him coming back into the water and landing safety. He lost his beanie, but lucky he didn't lose a whole lot more than that. I mean, let's be very thankful there was not a marshal or a camera guy in that boat, because that could have gotten really ugly really fast. Likely he was going to hook that way, the way he was turning, but what if he would have hooked back into the boats that were coming around the corner to his right? I mean, that could have been a deadly situation for multiple people. I mean, in so many ways, this could have been so much worse, but I think there are things we can learn from this. The things we have just talked about, trim that down. Don't be so aggressive. You're really not gaining that much when you're going inside turn. Being shorter line, you're going to gain some. So if you can trim your boat down a little bit, get it under control, that's a safe way to handle this, and try to go wide open in those dynamic wakes with the curve and the echoes. That's just not a good situation. One question though, what kind of GoPro mount or action cam mount does that guy have? Because that thing was rock solid. That must be legit. Now that Aaron's safe, and I'm pretty sure what I read on social media, the boat and motor were totaled, let's talk about some of the safety rules and safety violations. We talked about, hey, trim it down, be safe, don't take unnecessary risks, give yourself room to operate. It's not worth it for a fish. But now let's talk about maybe some of the rules infractions that happened, and I'm wondering why something didn't happen and why he was able to weigh in his fish both days of this tournament. I just don't understand how MLF, FLW, Big Five tournament directors didn't come down with some sort of punishment or DQ for those day one actions. For some perspective and precedent set in the past by FLW, which is kind of the previous league now owned by MLF, they have enforced rules based on GoPro type videos in the past and gave out punishments after the tournament or after that day of competition. In 2014, co-angler Jason Johnson lost full day's catch and was DQ'd for the day in the final day of the season for co-anglers because he inadvertently made a single cast with 1 foot on the front of the deck of his boat while just after netting the boater's fish. Now, that's clearly against the rules. You're not allowed to cast from the front of the deck because that would be a competitive disadvantage to other, or a competitive advantage to other, or to you versus other co-anglers if your boater let you on the front of the deck and other boaters didn't. He totally broke the rule, but it was one cast. It was clearly inadvertent, and I don't know if he caught a fish on that cast or not, but a super small advantage, right? But he lost his whole day catch. He never put anybody else in any harm's way. There was no safety violation. We could argue whether that was an appropriate punishment or not. Maybe he should have just lost his big fish. Maybe it should have been a 2-pound penalty. Who knows? We can't argue that at this point. But the point is, they used video evidence to go back and retroactively enforce the rules, which could have been done here clearly. I think in this case, I am really surprised there wasn't action taken against Mr. Britt, the angler, for what he did. And let's talk about those rules now. Aaron's video went up that night before day 2 of competition. So there was clearly time for tournament directors to see this. I mean, a lot of people saw this video. I'm sure they saw it as well. So first of all, under the sportsmanship section, boat operation in an unsafe manner is a rule. Clearly, this would be a judgment call by a tournament director, but I don't see how this was deemed safe boat operation in any way at all. So this could be a little subjective, but I feel this is already rules for potentially a stiff penalty or a DQ for day 1, as, in my opinion, clear unsafe operation of a bass boat to himself and other competitors and the public potentially in that area. I mean, this is just not something we want the public to look at bass fishing in this light and tournament fishing. Now, the kill switch seems to be a gray area. Aaron claims that he unclipped it right here. You know, he's saying that he went like this and unclipped it as he got up. It would have been a very quick movement, a very swift unhook. I definitely can't unhook any of my kill switches that fast. They're usually kind of a big pain in the you-know-what to unhook. So if he can unclip his that easily, that fast, kudos to you. You look at the video. I will let you make your own judgment on that. Let me know in the comments below if you think he had his kill switch on from the start or whether he actually got unhooked. It's hard to tell. It's not definitive, but it's definitely a gray area. But at the very end of this video, there is an undeniable and definitive black and white safety rule violation in my opinion. At the very end here, he clearly sits down and I see no movement at all from his hands to reattach his safety switch or kill switch. And he clearly, the boat was running the whole time and he put it in gear. Now that itself is a kill switch. Now I don't know what happened after that, if he like backed off immediately, reattached it and then went, but clearly the boat went in forward gear, unattached, and that is a black and white clear rule violation. Now whether that's a DQ or a penalty or whatever, there should have been some kind of penalty. And I just don't see it. Looking at his standings, what he weighed in, from what I can tell, there was no punishment handed out, and that just sets a bad precedent for what anglers can be done and what shouldn't be done. I mean, there should have been some kind of punishment. There should have been some announcement. Like, we need to make a point of this so anglers feel that, that they can't go out and run. I mean, nobody should be running boats that fast without a kill switch, PFD, and all that kind of stuff. Now, clearly, he had a PFD on. That's got to be a black and white. Does it have to be a DQ? Probably should be, but if it's not, there's got to be some kind of penalty. So to me, based on the sportsmanship, safe operation, kill switch rules, he absolutely should not have had his day one weight counted. But anyways, from what I can tell, there was no punishment and something needed to be done. Either way, he had a bad event. Didn't catch a ton of fish. He wasn't in the paycheck. He didn't affect anybody else's. But hey, something needed to be done. I'm glad nobody was seriously harmed, but this stuff should be taken seriously and examples should be made and discussed so things like this can be prevented in the future. Love to hear your guys' perspective in the comments. If you think I'm crazy, if you think I'm way off base, let me know it down below. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I don't think so. I hope this video just helps one person make better choices on the water, drive a little slower, drive a little safer. Hopefully we can prevent some accidents. Hopefully we can save a life, prevent somebody from getting seriously injured, prevent and minimize the amount of black eyes that this sport gets in the public eye. People need to hear this stuff. So if you guys know people that need to hear this stuff, need to see these videos, please share my video and share this out so people understand how serious this is. Now, future videos, we're going to get back into fishing education, entertainment content. So if you guys want to continue to learn to catch more big bass and suck less, watch one of these videos coming up right here.